All right, let's try that again. Sorry about that. I had tried streaming a few minutes ago. My phantom power supply wasn't working properly or wasn't on, so that was the problem. I have fixed that problem. So hopefully we can continue from where we left off, which basically was the very beginning, because you had heard nothing that I said. All right, let's try that again. Sorry about that. I had tried streaming a few minutes ago. My phantom power supply. There we go. Okay, so I had to turn off my video there. So a couple things. Let me get them out of the way, because I tried getting them out of the way last time, but nobody heard me. First things first, I blame all you out there tonight watching for this tonight. I had put on my Twitter if you guys wanted to have a controversial topic of epic proportions or just a normal controversial topic. Again, I do these controversies on Friday, controversy of the week or so, and you guys all pretty much voted unanimously for something a little more biting, I guess. So about 85%, I think it was, that said, yeah, something like this. So anyways, this is one of the things I was thinking about having a topic of. I'd asked other people what they wanted to have a topic on. So this is something that I think that is going to be very interesting. And I want to make it very clear before we even continue. I want to make sure everybody reads the video description about this, because I want to be able to discuss this in more of a clinical type of views. I want to be able to talk about these topics in a way that are controversial but are non-controversial. In other words, they shouldn't be causing any division. They shouldn't be divisive in any kind of way whatsoever. I want people to recognize that, look, I am full for trans rights. I started in a transgender community when I came on YouTube. Matter of fact, Nadia Vet Chambers was in my live chat last night, and if it wasn't for her, I probably wouldn't even have a YouTube channel. So, I mean, I very much entrenched in in that community, whether they recognize it or not. It's been a long while, but and that's before most people even came to my channel. So I have a stake in that matter, right? I mean, I'm definitely an ally when it comes to that. So I want to make sure that, if there's any trolls that come around or anything like that, and there's anybody that are just going to be causing problems, make sure that, we eliminate them right off the bat, because that's not what these controversies are for. I mean, these are one of those things that when I do these things, they may not even have a solution, right? They may not even have a correct opinion to have, right? I mean, the controversies I try to do on controversies of the weeks are basically those that, we question things. We question our understanding of the topics. We question our positions on the topic. They could be swayed either way. It may not be a right or wrong answer to be even had, right? But something like this is generally, going to be divisive in some ways because of the terminology being used. This is what I'm saying from the onset. How we used words is how do we convey meaning to things, right? Words don't have intrinsic meanings. By the way, I'm doing something different tonight, a little bit different than normal. Can anybody recognize what's a little bit different? And I'll give you a hint. It's in here somewhere. Wait. There we go. It's in here somewhere. Something's a little bit different. Do you guys notice? See who the first person who notices this. See how much you pay attention when I go live. But I do have a room open. I have given the link to Oh, you know what? I need to give them a new link. Oops, because I rebooted my computer because I wasn't sure what was going on. So anyways, I have a new link, and I'll put it out there. If you guys message me on Twitter, if you guys message me on G+, whatever it is, just give me your how you want it sent to you, and I can send it to you if you guys want it in. Because again, these are open discussions. Anybody can come in. I know a few people that wanted to off the bat, or at least soon after I started. So let me get those out real quick. All right, so let me kind of dive into this. So we kind of brought this on. So recently, CNN, they had a tweet and they had a story. And the story was basically American Cancer Society now recommends cervical cancer screening. It starts at 25 and 21. Okay, nothing too alarming there, right? Nothing too controversial. But they go on to say that individuals, in fact, let me blow this up so you may see it better. So what they say is individuals with a cervix are now recommended to start cervical cancer screening at 25. Okay, now here's the controversy that seems to be going on Twitter. One group of people says that's inclusive language, right? They want to be able to be inclusive, and individuals are nondescript, right? I mean, individuals are just people. And the other group says, well, there's an effect to be had on women's health issues because. Is it only women that have cervixes? Do men have cervixes? Because if you're talking about individuals, that would obviously be so inclusive to include male, female, men, women, whatever the terminology you want to use, it'd be all inclusive. So The controversy out there is basically there are some people saying that men have cervixes. They are saying that men menstruate. They're saying these things that while we understand the terminology used in certain communities, and we know the difference between genders and biological distinctions of sexes, is it when they say something like men should go have their cervixes checked, women should have their prostate checked, isn't confusing to people that may not know biology very well, right? Even though it's inclusive language, even though it's referring to gender rather than biological sex. If we have a society that have people that are, and by the way, this is just a fact, we have people that are just scientifically illiterate. I mean, we have a president who thinks that the Earth is 7,000 years old, right? So because of this inclusive language, the argument is out there is, does it reinforce the misunderstandings that some people have when it comes to basic biology? There are probably people out there that do think biological men have a cervix. There are probably people out there that think biological women have a prostate. Now, again, there's a fundamental distinction between gender and sex, right? You can have most people generally go by what's called a bimodal distribution of gender. You have male on one side, female on the other, and you're somewhere in the middle. You're somewhere from one side to the other. Some people categorize themselves as strictly male, some people female, some people non-binary, which would be kind of in the middle. There have been arguments that say non-binary is both. I've never heard anybody logically explain that, because on a bimodal distribution, you can't be both modes, right? You have to be you're somewhere on that x-axis, right? Like a function, you can only have one-to-one correspondence. You have to have some position on that bimodal distribution. So you could be more feminine, you could be more male, you could be non-binary, which is going to be, again, you just don't associate gender-wise with either male or female, which is fine. But I haven't ever, and nobody's given me a working explanation of what a non-binary would be with both modes, right? Both extrema, right? I don't know how that would work on a bimodal distribution. Maybe there's some other model that I'm unaware of, which is perfectly possible. But I'm totally unaware of it. And if somebody can actually send it to me on my Twitter, I'll definitely take a look at it. So I want to know where you guys stand on it. Again, I have a room open. I'll give you guys a link if you want in. But do you think that by using this type of inclusive language, like saying men have cervixes, it is confusing to maybe people learning biology, especially people of younger ages, right? I mean, we all remember in 5th grade, I think that was the year for me, where they separate the boys and the girls kind of thing, and they kind of teach the girls one thing about certain things that happen in their bodies when they change, boys other things. Still to this day, I don't know what the hell they were talking about, but whatever. We were all confused at those ages. But it is really confusing to a kid when you say something like, man has a cervix, right? I mean, that's at least what the argument is. Do men have cervixes? And biologically speaking, of course, medically speaking, that would, and I'm not a doctor, but again, this is pretty well common. Men don't have cervixes, right? They don't have a cervix. They don't have a uterus. And that doesn't necessarily make somebody a male or female, obviously, because we're talking about, one, about genders, and two, somebody can have a bilateral hysterectomy or a full hysterectomy, or it's called a trachelectomy, is this the removal of the cervix. But so if you don't have a cervix, all of a sudden you don't change your biological sex, right? I mean, these are called accidental properties, right? Like a human is categorized as bipedal, right? But if you lose a leg, you're all of a sudden you're no longer a human, right? You're still a human. That's called an accidental property rather than an internal or inherent property. Like, as a human, we can't change the fact we're multicellular. We can't change the fact that we're chemoheterotropic. We can't change the fact that we have an internal digestive system. These are innate properties that we have, which are categorized as being human. So just because we're bipedal as a human, hominoid, if we lose a leg, we don't stop being human. Just like if a woman has a hysterectomy, she doesn't stop becoming a woman, right? That's clearly not the case. But the controversy, again, on Twitter seems to be these two groups of people of how these use words. And again, words have usages. When somebody says, hey, a person who's trans, this trans man, let's say transgender that went from male to female, is a woman. Sure, absolutely. Yeah, they're a woman. Okay. We understand that. We understand that using about gender, right? But there's still medical things to be had about that person. That person still, if you have a transgender that has transitioned from male to female, there still has to be, they still have prostate unless they have that removed, and it still has to be medically evaluate every so often for cancer. Same thing for a female that transitions to men. You know, unless they have a tricholectomy or a hysterectomy, they still have a cervix. So we're talking about gender at the time. We're not talking about biological biology. Where you basically in biology, the men donate sperm, the women or the female, I should say, the male of the species donates sperm, the female receives it as an ovum to form a gamete, right? Or two gametes get together and form a zygote. So this is how it's understood in biology. But again, irrelevant when we talk about trans issues, right? I mean, nobody's going to say to a trans person, you're not a real woman. Matter of fact, what's funny is my friends who were born biologically female are more often told they're not a real woman, right? I mean, my close personal friend, Sweet Heathen, she's been told she's not a real woman. Now, she has a biological daughter, came out of her uterus, right? I mean, but she's not a real woman, according to certain people. Cheshire, who was born biologically female, was told she's not a real woman. Now, if you tell that to a trans person, you're going to get, like, canceled as well. Maybe you should. I mean, that's just, to me, is egregious. That's unethical to me to try to harm somebody by trying to exacerbate their dysphoria or exacerbate the pain that they must have by not feeling comfortable in their own body, right? So those are completely different things. So I want to get your guys' view on this, right? And by the way, I have a lot of trans friends that pop by, so if one of them ever wants to weigh in, by all means, you'll get, first crack of the table here. But I know a lot of people said they're going to come in a little later because they're busy. So I want to make sure that people have the opportunity to express themselves in these controversies. But let me kind of look at my my live chat here. It's very hard for me to read these things. So let's see where you guys stand. At me if you want me to read it, or super chat or whatever. Either is fine. Super chat if you want super chat, but just put at me if I read, and I'll read it. So let's see where you guys stand. Women's health. Okay, NZ Pure says women's health certainly needs more emphasis. The number of people who don't realize women don't usually present heart attacks like men do. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Remember back in the day when I was talking about being in school, we had, women's health issues were huge because they felt, and rightly so, that the medical profession weren't properly taking care of their health needs. Right? We have the same thing in the African American community, right? A lot of doctors aren't taking care of their specific needs that are, and so we understand that there needs to be reformed. We understand that people need to be more inclusive. I don't think there's an argument to be had against that, right? But the argument is now when CNN has like individuals with a cervix rather than just women with a cervix. Personally, I don't see that much of a problem with it. I mean, individuals with a cervix, okay, so what? I mean, it just, we know it means somebody with a cervix, right? I mean, there's nothing inherently, I think, incorrect with that statement. So I don't think it's a big kerfluffle. But some people saying that by saying individuals, why don't you just say women? Okay, well, I mean, sure. I mean, you're just basically using a different word to describe a group of people, right, that has a cervix. And when we're saying women, we just mean biological women that are born biologically with a cervix. We're not talking about trans women, which are women, right? I mean, no, I'm not going to argue that they're not women. Absolutely, they're women. But they recognize that if you're male to female, you don't have a cervix. Again, biology is just the health considerations for that, right? If you're a transition from male to female, certainly you're a woman, but you don't need to go in to have your cervix, tested. You don't need a pap smear or anything. You don't need to check for cervical cancer. Just like, if you went from female transition to male, you're not going to need a prostate check. So these things have to be addressed, right? These are factual issues rather than things that people, I think, go out of their way to make drama out of, right? Because sure, there's an argument to be had that, oh, look, people use these arguments against trans people. Yeah, they do. And these people are assholes who do that, right? They're just people that are shitty people. We recognize that. TERFs especially. Oh my God. I mean, I could safely say that I've only really ran into a TERF one-on-one a handful of times at most, right? I mean, I could literally probably think of on one hand how many times I have. But trans people have dealt with these TERF people forever, and I've seen at least these conversations. And let me tell you, those are pretty nasty people. TERFs are pretty nasty people. I'm glad they don't come around here. They wouldn't be welcome. But they are some of the most vile, vicious, evil people I could possibly imagine, because all they want to do is hurt people. They want to be exclusionary. They want to be able to say, look, you weren't born a woman, so therefore you're not one. And I think that has no purpose in any dialogue whatsoever. In fact, it's made to make themselves feel superior while hurting other people. So when they say, though, well, where a biological male doesn't have a cervix, okay, yeah, that is true, right? I mean, but it's all how you are expressing your argument. If I say, biological men don't have a cervix, that is a factual statement. But if I just say it to somebody to hurt them, that's ineffective, right? That's no purpose for that. The reason you would want to say, like, men don't have cervixes is, again, if you're talking in a biological sense for male health or female health, right? Because that's when it would be applicable. It's not going to be applicable in these conversations on Twitter where, these TERFs are trying to, tell trans people that they're, it's all in their head or something like that. Which is another thing that just bothers me the crap out of me. Because I try to put myself in somebody else's shoes, right? I try to be empathetic. And I think to myself, look, I'm happy in my own body. I'm cisgender, heterosexual male. Although I got to tell you, I saw somebody did a deep fake of Robert Reed and Shakira the other day that I posted. And I'm like, that might work for me. I didn't have a problem with this for some reason. It was actually pretty good. Sorry, Robert. You got it going on. Your face and Shakira's body actually works. I'm telling you. By the way, he's actually going to probably be on this Sunday. We're going to have a little chat. Robert Reed, if you know him. Great guy on Twitter. Yeah, trans is a trans exclusionary radical feminist. In fact, it's in the name, right? I mean, they call themselves trans exclusionary radical feminists. It kind of implies that they're excluding a whole group of people just because they want to feel special, just because they feel like they are somehow more of a woman than a trans person, and they do that again just to try to hurt people, I think. Oh, hi, Mikey. No, I figured it out. Mikey asked me for tech help. I got it. Let me give Nikki also the new thing, the new link. But I mean, so this is kind of where I'm at, right? So here's my I guess position on this kerfluffle. I don't think it's much of a kerfluffle with CNN. Again, I don't have a problem with using individuals with a cervix, because again, okay, they're trying to be inclusionary. Do I think it harms women's health? Do I think it sets it back? No, because we know biology, right? I mean, most of us do. And so when we're talking about biology and a biological capacity in the domain of discourse as biology, then we're going to have a little bit different type of topic of discussion, right? It's going to be a little bit different. So we're going to understand that the males of the species don't have a cervix, the females don't have a prostate. Okay, but that's not what the CNN was basically trying to get people to be aware of the age difference of when you should go get your cervix checks for any kind of cervical cancer. And again, when they say individuals, they know. I mean, it's well established they're meaning somebody that was born with a cervix, right? I mean, it's just clearly that's the case. So I don't think as much of a kerfluffle as people make it out to be on Twitter. I've seen a lot of divisive things on it, and I just don't think it needs to be that divisive. That's my opinion on it. Titan says nobody says TERF anymore. Well, yeah, you tell me. No, I don't know. It's FART, feminism apologetic radical transphobe. That's actually pretty good. I actually like that. They're farts. Yeah, I don't think I'll ever have a TERF on. I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to say that as a promise. If somebody like a friend of mine said, "Hey Steve, I really want to have a discussion with a TERF just because I want to like shove their head up their ass," okay, maybe I might consider it, right? But I don't like giving platforms to people that I think spew hate. I really don't. And so there would have to be some kind of advantageous reason for a TERF to come on my channel. But I like that. Let's see here. Let's see. Moon says, I'm a very nice person, but I will not allow you to invalidate another person. Experience, Willie Mays fan, and Greg Hughes, neither of you have the right to do that, and I agree. By the way, welcome back, Willie Mays fan. It's been a while. I don't know what Willie was saying, so let me kind of catch up here. I know Moon is saying disagree, so that's wrong. Transgender women are women too. Yes, absolutely. What is Willie okay, so this would be a perfect example of people using words differently, right? So I mean, Willie Mays, I guess, is trying to argue that trans women are not women. Is that what he's trying to argue, if I'm not mistaken? So what does he mean by that, right? I mean, when we're talking about, woman and female, there's a whole bunch of different things that go into that context, right? There's social considerations, there's social roles, there's psychological issues. And that's not pejorative, by the way. I mean, literally, look, I feel like a man, right? I mean, I think that what I think in my head would be kind of masculine, right? I have a masculine kind of energy that I think. And I think, somebody might be been born in a body that, might be phenotype male, but completely have a female mindset, right? I mean, I can imagine myself having the same exact mindset as a male, but in a female body, right? And that would probably lead to some kind of dysphoria or it'd be odd, right? Because I'd be like, wait a minute, I don't feel like I'm born in the body that I should be born in, right? I totally get that. That's what empathy is. So I don't understand why, Willie Mays would say that, trans women aren't women. Well, yes, we're talking about gender. They're women, right? I mean, obviously, I'd probably take umbrage if somebody said, hey, look, transgender women are, biologically women with, prostates. And there's some problems with that, right? But I don't think that's what he's arguing. And I don't think even trans people would even have an issue with that. I mean, the whole point of being trans is that you're saying, look, I was born or assigned this way, and I don't feel this way. I want to transition to what I more feel like I am. Perfect, right? I mean, if let's say you're assigned male as birth, which I think is a really strange thing that doctors do, right? Is assign gender, but let's go argue into that that's what it is. So if somebody is assigned male at birth, and a phenotype male, right? They have a prostate in the whole nine yards, but they transition to female. They are male to female trans. That's what the terminology would be, right? In the medical profession, I think it's exactly the same, right? But they are women at that point. When they transition, they're women. I don't know what else word to call them at that point, because we're talking about a gender, right? We're talking about how they express themselves, right? I don't think anybody argues you can change biological sex. Now, I've seen some people on Twitter try. Don't do that. I mean, your biological sex is determinate on very specific biological factors. And I'm not talking about XY chromosomes. I'm not talking about XY determinate chromosome systems. It's determined between the ability, the property, be able to either inseminate or be inseminated, produce sperm or produce ova. But there's different category systems, right? But whatever it is, whatever that system is that you use, it is non-changeable, right? That is not changeable, and that's fine. Who cares? But TERFs, yes, they do use that as an argument, right? They use that as a weapon, and it shouldn't be. That's the problem, right? That's the problem. It's not that these things are factual or people that are educated in biology would say otherwise, except for a handful of people. It is the shitty people using these things as weapons, I think. So atheist linguist says, damn it, Steve, now I got Shania Twain stuck in my head. How did I get to Shania Twain? I must have missed that. I do like Shania Twain, though. I'm not big into country, but who doesn't like Shania Twain? Willie Mays fan says, I don't have any issue with calling them the name they wish to be called. Okay, well, that's a start, right? I mean, people, if somebody identifies as female, then they're female. Fine, I have no problem with that either. Now, obviously, I do have some considerations when it comes to linguists with using third person they them, but that's a whole different issue. That's a different category altogether. I'm not even going to get down that rabbit hole. But when we're talking about assignment of pronouns, if somebody is identifies as female, why would you not use a female pronoun, right? I mean, especially in Spanish, they do it all the time. The words are masculine and feminine, right? So I don't see a problem with assigning a female or male a pronoun or something like that to a person when they want to be called that, right? I mean, me, I prefer he, him, right? I mean, you can call me she, or her, but it doesn't bother me, but it might bother somebody else who identifies with a specific gender, right? Sure. I don't know why you would want to call me she, but whatever. But no, I identify as he, right? And so if somebody identifies as she, that's fine. I don't know why anybody would take pause or that. Nikki says, me personally, I have never felt like a man. I do guy things, but I gravitate more to female things and thoughts. Sure, yeah, exactly. I mean, you are female because you have a female mindset. I do think that the mind is a lot of how we think about things, right? I think that men and women, generally speaking, again, I'm not trying to put a huge dichotomy there, although I do think male and female is dichotomous. Not female means male, not male means female. There are no other options when it comes to biological sex, right? Gender, sure, you can talk about gender in more of a gradient or a spectrum. Even though I don't even think that gender is a spectrum per se. I had a doctor in gender studies that I talked to, and we were talking about bimodal distributions, and she was talking about scatter plots and some other stuff. And she said that she made a good argument. She's like, look, if you try to put gender on some kind of scatter plot or box plot or whatever, you're trying to plot it out somewhere, you're going to find these discontinuities. It's not going to be some kind of smooth, contiguous type function. And she said, in order to be a gradient, it has to be smooth. And she made a good point on that. I'm like looking at the data points. They're kind of all over the place, right? So, I mean, if someone wants to like argue that gender is a spectrum, I'm not going to like argue otherwise. But I mean, I think that maybe methodologically speaking, mathematically speaking, that may not be the case. But not a hill I'm willing to die on. Atheist Linguist says, what do you think would happen if we developed the medical technology to actually change biological sex, i.e. gametite? Well, I mean, I think it'd be interesting. Yeah, I think it'd be interesting. I think that would probably qualify. I mean, first of all, you'd have to be phenotype, right? You have to change phenotype. You'd have to change your genotype, right? You would have to do it at the cell level, right? So, I mean, there'd be a lot of things. I mean, it would just be, I don't know what that would even entail, right? Because it would be a lot more than just genetic editing at that point. Min says, I think the whole group will be happy when you place your pronoun after your name on Twitter. Yeah, look, again, I'm not a fan of that on Twitter. I get it. I get why some people do, right? The reason I think some people do is because they want to be known as a certain thing, and people misgender them. Okay, fine, put it on your Twitter. But do you think there's a reason for me to put my preferred pronoun on my Twitter? Right? Is it because I have long hair? Because that's kind of sexist, right? And by the way, did anybody notice something different? I asked earlier. I didn't see. Did anybody put what was different tonight? I'll give you guys one more chance because I may have not seen. If you said it, I missed. But what's different? But just because I have long hair, do people confuse me, thinking that I might be a her or identify with a her? I mean, unless you have a reason to, I just don't think there's. I need to put my gender out there, right? As far as he or her, assuming he or him, on my Twitter. So, Varian said, SciShow did a video more than two sexes, not biological sexes. Yeah, that's a biological fact. I mean, biologically speaking, in biology, in the domain of biology, we're talking about biological sex, right? There's two. There's male and female. If you can think of a third, please let me know. But non-binary is not a gender. Trans is not it's not a sex. Trans is not a sex. Intersex is not a sex. Hermaphrodite is not a sex. These are not biological sexes. They have absolutely nothing to do with biological sex. Biological sex is your sperm and the ovum. That's how it's basically determined in biology, what constitutes male and female of a species. Sandring says, I have Klinefelter syndrome. Okay, so so he has Klinefelter syndrome, which is basically you have 48XXY or 48XXYY, 49. So you basically have an extra X chromosome. There's Klinefelter syndrome, which you have an extra X. You have a Turner syndrome, which is X0, where you're missing a Y chromosome. You can, by the way, you can live without a Y. You can't live without an X. I took health because he has Klinefelter syndrome, and I don't consider myself some third sex because you're not. Third sex is not dependent upon chromosomes, right? There's an XY chromosome determinate system, but that's not something that is like ontological necessity, because if you have a Y chromosome, you're a male. That's not the case, right? So I don't use that. I think that's a bad argument when there's been people out there going, look, you got a Y chromosome, you're a male. Not necessarily, right? Again, it depends on the system that you want to use. And the fact that a Sandring has an extra X doesn't make him more female, right? I mean, men have XY, right? So I don't consider myself some third sex. I just have some extra partying going on with chromosomes on the chromosomes. It does have some interesting side effects. Yeah. I mean, Klinefelter is pretty common, actually. I think, or at least a lot more. I mean, when I was in high school and I actually, we were learning about Turner. I was in college, I guess. I learned about Klinefelter and Turner syndrome. Yeah, it's a pretty significant part of the population that have chromosomal, quote, abnormalities. That doesn't make them, by the way, not normal. I mean, technically, an abnormality is, if you have a certain amount of group, it's outside of, 1 or 2 sigma, right? It's not supposed to be a pejorative. And again, when TERFs use something as a pejorative, like, oh, that's not normal. Oh, that's the thing. Same thing they use about, the arguments against, people that are gay. Oh, that's not normal. Well, what do you mean by normal? Okay, I mean, looking at a population, sure, about 10 to 12% of the population is gay, give or take, if I had a guesstimate. Okay, but we're not using normal in as a pejorative like that, right? We're just saying that the majority, the heteronormative of the world is straight. So what? It doesn't have any bearing on anything when people are gay, right? I mean, it's just you're just 1 or 2 standard deviations from what the overall average would be if you took a slice of a random distribution, right? So let's see here. Again, I'm trying to go through all this. A lot of people are talking, but if you want to read me to read something at me, but I'll read some of the others if I can. Willie May says that's a truth claim. Can he prove it? I think he's talking to Moon. But what is his argument? See if you can kind of parse it out for me. I mean, again, the room's open. I got nobody in here. Nobody's even tried to come in. So who wants to come in and have a conversation? Who wants to come on the line? I can control who comes in and comes out. So I'm just going to put the link out there, and I can make a room anytime, and nobody's being shown unless I know who you are. But let me know you're coming in, and I'll put you on here. That's a link to join. And let me get your guys' view on this. Again, so far, have I at least presented this in a clinical kind of way? Again, this is not contentious, and like I said, anybody who goes after a trans friend of mine is going to have to make. They're gonna have to deal with me. They're gonna have to. They're gonna have to go away. I think. I don't tolerate that kind of crap. So, and it's a shame too, because people know that people go after my friends, right? A lot of people don't go after me so much anymore because I just don't care. But they decided, oh well, Steve's not going to respond to me, so I'm going to go after people that he cares about, his friends, which is pretty crappy of these people. But that's what TERFs and people like that do, right? They want to hurt people. Atheist Linguist says, simply put, the majority shouldn't be prescriptive over outliers. Well, I mean, sure, in a way. I mean, I don't think any of this should be prescriptive, right? I'm a descriptivist, unless you ask Matt Dillahunty, who keeps getting my position wrong and doesn't care. There's nothing prescriptive to be had here. Look, if the thing is, do men have cervixes? We have to understand, and you're a linguist, you're working on a PhD as a linguist. That word men has different usages, right? I'm not going to even say the word meaning. I'm going to say usages. Okay, so if you're referring to men in a biological sense, right, then the answer would be no. If you're referring to in a gender sense, then yes, right? A trans male to female transition will have a cervix unless they have, again, a hysterectomy or a trichotillomectomy. So it depends how these propositions, right? I mean, this is a question. This is what's called an interrogatory. But it can be phrased in the form of a proposition. Men have cervixes. That would be propositional. That proposition is either true or false, right? Because of excluded middle, there could be no other options, right? And so the first thing we have to do when you have a proposition, you have to avoid any kind of ambiguity, any kind of amphibity, any kind of equivocation, right? You have to get rid of those things, because in order to make a proposition make sense, you have to be able to ask the person, well, what do you mean by the connotation or the conveyance of the word that you're using in order to make that proposition true or false? In one sense of the word, the proposition may be true. In another sense, it's false. But that leads to ambiguity, right? But if you only have one sense of the word, that proposition, men have cervixes, can only be true or false, right? And I think what happens, because it is more normative to understand that biologically speaking, men don't have cervixes, that question, do men have cervixes, would be answered as a whole as no, right? I think that would be, I would answer that question no, because I'm going to be interpreting that word in a biological type sense. Somebody else might be interpreting it as a different sense, but that's fine. People are allowed to do that. The easiest way around that is just, well, what do you mean by that? I mean, how are you using that word? Well, if you say, do men have cervixes, and we're talking about transgenders, and we're talking about people that transitioned, then yes, in that case, gender-wise, yes. But again, it depends on how you use these terms. Somebody just dropped in here. Let me get him in here in 1 second. Moon says He is just saying that God created only man and woman, and he doesn't make mistakes. Oh, that's an entirely different thing there. Let me tell you, Willie Mays fan. God sure seems to have made some mistakes. But anyways, we'll get into that another time. By the way, Willie Mays fan, I'm not going to like throw you under the bus here, but I got to tell people, he is a young Earth creationist, which kind of tells you his mindset. But he's a nice guy. Don't be dissing him. I disagree with intersex exist, trans exist, and I don't believe in God. Yeah, intersex exists, but intersex is not biological intersection, right? Intersex has to do with the fact that it has to do with phenotypes, has to do with the difference between assigning a birth and phenotypical type characteristics rather than biological characteristics, right? Because that's not a third sex. Intersex does not mean male-female intersex. I've never read anything to the sort, and everybody I've ever talked to has a PhD in medicine or these studies has agreed that biologically speaking, it's male or female, and intersex is not a third category. They even said intersex is still either born biologically male or born biologically female. That is a biological dichotomy. All right, hey, it's Sandring, my friend. Hey, can you hear me?
Oh, I guess I unmuted myself.
Oh, first of all, when you can come visit me, buddy? More than welcome. You know that, right?
Thank God I finally got out of that area of the country. Oh my God. Horrible area.
Yeah,
I was bouncing back and forth between Southern California and the Phoenix area, and I just got sick of 115-degree weather.
Oh, I know. I had the AC on all day, and I had to turn off this because there's a buzzing sound. But yeah, it was hot today. Real quick, Kwasa 5001 says, anyone want to bet how many, quote, Steve is a transphobe tweets there will be tomorrow? Yeah, and that's the funny, Kwasa. Those are the people that I just block, right? Those are the people that are not having an honest dialogue, right? Those are people that are just trying to harm people, right? Because, again, I am supporting of trans people. I've always have been. A couple of them have actually stabbed me in the back over the years, but it happens, right? I don't want to use normal or regular. Just your average person has stabbed me in the back, right? So it doesn't matter whether somebody's trans or not. Anybody can stab anybody in the back, right? I never hold that to anybody, right? I've been stabbed in the back, by somebody who was gay, right? Do I want to, attribute that to all gay people? Of course not, right? So yeah, I'm definitely not transphobic. I'm not homophobic. These people that want to run those narratives, Kawasa, those are the people that need to be exposed. Those are the people that actually are probably either transphobic or at least bigoted in some ways, I think, right? But anyways, go ahead, Senator.
You just totally derailed my whole train of thought.
Sorry.
I used to be a, speaking of people going insane, I used to be pretty active in the trans community in Seattle. Back in the mid-2000s, and I left fairly quickly. I mean, it didn't take me very long. They kind of took a hard left and came back not crazy.
A lot of them have. Why is that? Why? Okay, let me ask you that. Why do you think that a lot, like for example, 5 years ago in the trans community, man, there's some really great voices out there. I really love to listen to them. I learned a lot that I normally probably wouldn't have learned. But I have seen more recently, there has been a more shifting to the hard left. And is that you think that's a pushback to the radical trans turfs and those people? You think that they're just trying to make a more hardline position? And by the way, you guys didn't notice, but yeah, I'm not wearing my headphones tonight.
I think there's. I would have said it was that you had your hair down, but I guess I've seen you with it down before.
Yeah, but I'm not wearing my headphones tonight. I've actually got an earpiece because of that. And actually, you can see my.
Oh, so gorgeous!
I love you.
I had my hair that long, twice, and it lasts about a year and a half before I get frustrated enough. I wake up in the middle of the night, it'll be hot, and my hair will be plastered across my face underneath the under, and it just I wake up and half a panic, and I'm like, and I finally go and hack it all off. And then I get some really strange looks when I walk in because I'll usually get like a navy high and tight after that.
Yeah, no, it's not fun in the hot weather to have. My hair's a wreck right now because it's frizzy, it's humid, I'm sweating, it's hot. Nikki says, I will never stab Steve in the back, even though I don't agree with a lot of his points or views. or watch a lot of his content. Yes, you do. I love Steve and most of the people around him, Chesh, Manya, just name a few. And thank you, by the way. And we appreciate that. Look, and by the way, we want people to have differing views. I mean, I get bored when people agree. This is that whole narrative of, oh, you can't disagree with Steve. Is like, what? my whole channel's been started because of disagreements. It's like, really? But that's what I'm saying. They don't care about the truth. They're not involved in these discussions. They've recused themselves years ago. But go ahead, Sandra.
I think as to like your question, what happened? Two things. One, I think some of it, like, and I saw this in the leadership of like the. I just suddenly drew a damn blank. I've been there hundreds of times. You'd think I could remember Ingersoll Center, Gender Center in Seattle. The leadership there started taking a very, I guess you call it hard left line, very intolerant of intolerance, which I always thought was odd statement, stance to take. And it was a trying to push, I guess you call it like trying to push the Overton window way far, so that when it finally did settle in the general population, you'd end up with the trans community more or less accepted and not harassed so much. And then there's the other section of them where they got a little bit of taste of, I guess you call it some sort of power, whether it's social power, whatever it is. They started getting some attention. People started paying attention. And they just went nuts over the thing. They just kept going and kept going and kept going. And now suddenly, if you hold what I consider an eminently reasonable stand of, there are two biological sexes, male, female. That's true. Mass, and it would be useful to separate out sex from gender, because 20 years ago they were just used interchangeably. There really wasn't a distinction between that. I mean, it was called a sex reassignment surgery. Time progressed, then it was called a gender reassignment surgery. So I think it is useful to separate sex and talk about sex in a biological sense only, and the fact that there are deviations from the norm for all mammals doesn't invalidate the traits or characteristics of whatever species you're talking about, including humans. So the fact that I have XXY doesn't change the fact that there are still or male and female biologically. I think it's incredibly useful to talk about gender as how people feel, your identity, because that's all over the place. There are so many different, just about as many people there are as, a gender identity. So, and they're all still human beings. They all still deserve to be treated with respect unless they lose that, by their own actions. There are some people I don't treat with respect, and it's because they lost that right.
Oh, I agree with you there. And by the way, that has nothing to do with any kind of intrinsic thing about them. When people lose their right, and people, when I do, I'm guilty of dehumanizing people just like anybody else when in certain discussions, but it has nothing to do with their intrinsic properties. It has to do with their extrinsic properties. It has to do with the fact that they are shitty people that want to go out and harm people. I'm going to treat them a little bit more disrespectful. That's just how I am. Look, I've been getting better at it, people. I'm sorry. I've been trying. But I understand that you're the way you're putting it is, look, there are certain people that, I just don't think they're good people, right? And I'm going to treat them a little bit less as a human because they don't have any human qualities, right? They don't have any human empathy for people. They're sociopathic. They have some kind of psychopathy where they want to go out and be malicious. They want to be sadistic. And I'm sorry, but to me, you lose your humanity when you're like that.
Yeah, I lose all respect for them. I don't, and I usually just ignore them at that point, And I try to treat people as I would wish to be treated upon first meeting, and my treatment of you thereafter is dependent upon, how you treat me.
Correct.
So I give you a bit of default respect, and then it's up to you to continue to earn that respect. And if you fail, well, then I'll just rather flush you out of my life. I don't need to deal with people like that.
Yeah, I agree. Okay,
one of the reasons why I'm not go with the super chat.
Okay, real quick. Let me read a couple of these things. Give my way. I'm sorry to interrupt you. But Min says, I want to disagree with you. The problem is that you're too precise and consistent for me to find out our disagreement. Probably. Mays says, gender and sex are the same thing. No, they're not, Willie Mays. Absolutely not. I mean, this is an ontological fact. This is again, words have usages, but in our understanding of words, the terms sex and gender refer to very different things. They're not synonymous. They will actually change the meaning of a proposition. The meaning of the proposition is non-transparent. It'd be opaque. If you say something like my gender is this, and you change that to sex, that can change the value of that proposition, whether it be like I said, it's called transparency or opacity. And so, no, they're not the same thing. You to say otherwise is, I'm telling you, Willie Mays, is just fundamentally wrong. Helio says, is the title for your show, or is the title just for show, or are there people trying to argue some men don't have cervixes? Well, I think most people would argue men don't have cervixes. The argument would be men do have cervixes. Kawasa says for 5,000, the decision to be more political, in my humble opinion, is a correct one, or in my opinion, is a correct one. The problem is the stance they take politically. It's just fundamentalism. I don't know why. Well, yeah, sure, it is political, and I think Sandy was getting there. That one of the reasons they do it is they feel like there's some more power to be had there, right? When they start using these terms in order to, especially cancel culture people, then yeah, there's a power to be had there, and they tap into that power place. Plus, they tap into the emotion to feel to emotion too. These are very polarizing positions and very hot topics, and I think that the people that want to use them for political gain will amplify those emotions in people in order to try to use those emotions against them to have them sway to their position, right? Josiah says 98% sure that's his position. Seen several conversations. Yeah, I agree with that. That probably is his position. But sorry, Willie Mays, you're just wrong. There's just, it's like you're saying 1 + 1 is 3 to us, right? There's an objective fact of the matter we have there. Sex and gender are completely different things. I mean, they're really related to each other. Don't get me wrong, but they are different things. I mean, anybody who takes biology, anybody who takes psychology would be able to explain that to you.
Well, it's incredibly useful to separate them out so that when you're talking about sex, you're talking about biology. When you're talking about gender, you're talking about people's individual interpretations of the entire spectrum of it. You know, your gender roles, gender identity, all of these things are fluid, and all of these things change over time. If you want to go back 400 years, it was the men that was wearing makeup and high heels.
Yeah.
So
yeah. That's very much true. And again, these are social expressions, right? Oh, come back,
yeah,
Nikki. Nikki came in and she says, I have nothing to add. That's not good. I want you to add something, Nikki. First, I want to hear your voice because I haven't talked to you forever. And second, you're the one person that challenged me the most on most things, on these things, even though I think we kind of agree on everything for the most part. But, I like to hear your position on this. So come back in, sweet. I mean, I'm sorry, Nikki. I get them all confused, Sandra.
You did misspell my name, though.
Oh, did I? Oh,
yeah, there's only one S.
What's in a name? What do you want to go by?
I know,
Let me fix it for you. I don't want to misname you. Your moniker. There we go.
Yes, thank you. Yes, because it's not actually even my name. It's just But
you see this? He's going to cancel culture me because I misspelled his name.
Yeah, and it's not even my stupid name either. It's what I used online for all my gaming accounts.
Yeah. All right. So she says you can't add anything. So Nikki, are you saying
you're
that
back?
Yeah, Nikki. First, I missed you. I haven't seen you for a while.
I know. I've been hiding.
Yeah. Oh wait. Okay. Here's the topic for tomorrow. People gonna be out there. Nikki Davis hiding from Steve McRae. Did I scare you off finally?
I mean, not from you
wait, of all your years of
specifically.
stalking me, now you're scared of me? And by the way, her stalking me, she was the best stalker I ever had. Yeah, you were. You still, even though you've moved on to other, I love you still. But
Good.
yeah. So where do you agree and you disagree on this? And by the way, am I presenting it in a way you are like the quintessential LGBTQ queen kind of person? You fight for all these things. If I do anything that's inappropriate,
there are a few more letters in there.
Yeah, I mean, you could we'll throw as many letters in. LGBTQ.
It's like.
What am I doing
right
anything
now,
wrong, or
like,
have I been insensitive in any way? You tell me.
I don't think so. I like how you distinguish constantly that sex and gender are completely different. I think that's an incredibly important part of this. And
I agree with you.
everything else is just kind of... I mean, I don't think biologically men have cervixes.
Yeah.
Like if you just want to talk about sex, but
yeah. So again, it's in the domain of discourse that we're talking about, right?
yeah,
yeah. And I think that's what
Well,
needs
I
to be
don't
under
even
consideration.
understand. Well, I don't understand what in the hell I mean, people really talk about first world problems. My God, people are complaining or bitching about the use of individuals. I mean, I think it just from a literary standpoint, it's kind of a clunky way of saying it. I would have said anyone instead of individuals. You know, but it makes it far easier to just use an word just individual or anyone with a cervix.
Yeah,
Women
you're
or
breaking up,
possibly
Sandra.
trans men if you haven't had. Oh, okay.
You're breaking up a little bit. Move closer to wherever your Wi-Fi is, or.
God, I don't know where the Wi-Fi is. I'm in the middle of nowhere, South Dakota.
Okay. Oh, go ahead. Continue.
just climb up a cell tower. God.
So yeah. I mean, it just makes it far easier than having to list out all the, you know, just say anyone with a cervix should probably get screening at 25 instead of 21, and then you don't have to say women or trans men who haven't had a hysterectomy, or, you know, and going through and trying to list all of the potential possibilities of anyone who may not have a cervix. Just say anyone with one.
Look, I do agree with you. I don't have a problem the way the CNN worded it. I mean, again, what's funny is, to me, it seemed like CNN was trying to avoid this very thing, right? It seemed like they wanted to focus on the health issues, and they wanted to be inclusive as possible, and they not have to worry about the distinctions between this and that category, and trans and not trans, and cis and not cis, and biological and gender. They didn't care about any of that. Their focus seemed to be on, you know, getting the information out there. If you have a cervix, you need to have it checked at this particular age. Everything else seems to be tangential and irrelevant. And I think there's something to be had about that, although there's a small pushback of, does it confuse, can it potentially confuse people learning biology? Yeah, but you know what? I think that's probably a very small amount of people that are that confused.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, because I really don't think that it's all that confusing biologically either, to just say anyone with a cervix.
Yeah.
Go. I mean, because you're not associating cervix with anything. You're just saying anyone with one.
Right.
Go.
And that's, I look, a fifth grader's not going to be really reading CNN anyways, right? That's not their audience. I mean, because in fifth grade, I probably didn't have a firm understanding of these things. In fact, in fifth grade, I was probably very confused myself about a lot of different things. We all go, how does this work? Yeah. I mean, we first watch those 40-minute videos and go, wait, what? That's how it works. That babies come from what? Yeah. How do women push that through that? I
want to answer a question from Mike Ortiz. It said that there are people with XY chromosomes and naturally formed vaginas. Humanity isn't 100% binary. You're right. There are abnormalities, genetic abnormalities, and physical characteristic abnormalities that happen all of the time, all across the country. It doesn't invalidate the standard characteristics of what is a human being. I mean, there's people born without legs all the time. It doesn't change the fact that human beings, as characteristic, have 2 arms, 2 legs, 5 fingers, 5 toes. You know, there's what, a sexdactyl? We have 6 fingers.
Yeah, we're pentadactyl.
That doesn't change. Yeah, that doesn't change your. That's what I meant, pentadactyl. That doesn't change your. It doesn't change the general, overall, overwhelming majority of human beings' characteristics. So yeah, there's deviation, and those deviations should be acknowledged that they exist. Just because you have a deviation, you know, it's like I'm not less of a person because I have an extra X chromosome. Okay.
Right. Well, again, these are called accidental properties, right? Again, it doesn't. If for example, like say Nikki, who was born biologically female, if she had a hysterectomy, it doesn't matter. It wouldn't make her any less of a woman. Just like if somebody has breast cancer and they have a mastectomy, it doesn't make them any less of a woman. These are phenotypical characteristics. They do not determine what makes somebody male or female. I personally don't go by the whole males have a penis, women don't. That is a phenotypical trait. I don't think that's really a fair way to actually try to approach gender or biological sex. Right? Again, I go by the more sensu latu, which would be more the precise way of doing it in biology, which is basically inseminate, not inseminate. It has the potentiality to, right? Doesn't mean that if somebody's born barren, doesn't mean they're less of a woman. It just means that they had a potential to be able to bear kids, right? Like, I have no potential to bear kids, no matter what. The potentiality is not there. A woman who has either the inability to produce eggs, has gone through menopause, had a hysterectomy, they still have the potentiality. That's how I kind of look at it in my framework. Other people can do it differently. But just how by you removing an accidental property doesn't change the fundamental characteristic of what we assign to somebody or what they assign themselves. Would you agree with that, Nikki? Nikki? We lost her.
She wandered off.
She's like, oh, squirrel.
Shiny thing over there.
We can hear you. Nikki has the attention span. She has a attention span of probably a 2-day-old gnat. We love you though. But what? No, go ahead, Nikki.
I don't know. I like muted my mic so that I wasn't heavy breathing into the microphone. But
one of the few people that would not bother me.
Yeah, I was gonna say that probably would get us more views, but that's an entire different video. Oh, look at that! Steve's harassing Nikki. Boy, if they only knew how back-assward that was. But again, I don't mind because I gave her consent. You have my full consent to harass me anytime, Nikki. Always have. Oh, that's a standing thing, forever and eternity.
Virillion had something to say
yeah, let me
to me,
read the
I
super
guess.
chat because Nikki's having some mic issues. Helios,
Okay.
$5. The organ that becomes the cervix becomes the prostate, what is that? Uticle. And it's susceptible to all the same diseases, but is much smaller, so rarely gets them. Well, the tissues are the same. Yeah, I can imagine that. The tissues are the same. Just like men can get breast cancer, right? We have breast tissue, of course. Nikki,
I
are you
just
there?
have a little more than average.
I don't know what happens.
Yeah,
I was just getting ice from my drink and it just kept cutting out.
yeah, Nikki, hang on one sec. NZ Pure says, joking about your pure attention span, I'm ADHD and I'm offended, you bigot rolling on the floor. No, look, most of my friends have ADHD, man. I've dealt with that for a very long time. Nikki, I'm well aware of her attention span, but I love her. You know I do.
Well, having ADHD is barely a problem.
Oh, I think you're right. I let me tell you, she's one of the funniest freaking people in the world with her ADHD. It's hilarious.
Stop.
You're awesome.
So what was the question again? I'm kind of buzzed right now. I'm on my Friday night kick, so.
Okay.
Sweet.
Well, I'm so glad that
I wish I could do that.
But I'm so glad that even Nikki approves. I want to make sure that I want to approach these issues fairly and honestly. Because again, there's no agenda to be had here. These are just it's so funny because we're able to talk about topics that can be controversial in a way that try not to piss anybody off, right? And yeah, it'd be sensitive to type of these things because I've seen a lot of people try to approach these conversations in a very negative type way, and they don't do anybody any good. Go ahead, Simon.
Or hand-handed.
Oh, I piss people off all the time with the things that I say.
You what?
And I piss people off all the time with the things that I say, and I've always thought that I was a fairly moderate person. I had a fairly
me too, right?
reasonable.
I don't have radical views.
Something.
In fact, S.J. Thomason calls me like the most controversial agnostic on YouTube, and I'm like, but I'm pretty moderate. I don't think I have any extreme views. I'm a centrist. I mean, yeah, I'm more of a social liberal, and I'm more of a fiscal conservative for the most part. But even then, I'm in a very small centrist type position. I mean, if somebody could tell me one of my more radical views, I want to know what they are because maybe I'm just not thinking of any. But if you think I have a radical view, somebody tell me. I'm curious. Helios says, "Can I super chat to have Nikki never mute her mic when she's breathing heavy?" You don't need to. I'll just make sure that she never does.
I feel assaulted by Helios.
Do you?
So
As well as you should. Yes.
Ban them from the chat.
Yes. We're gonna cancel culture Helios.
Hell yeah.
Yes.
Virillion said labeling them as either male or female is not up to someone else to decide. It's up to that individual. He tagged me. I'm not quite sure why.
I agree with that. Don't you?
But I would say, well, no, I don't agree. I actually don't agree with that because the overwhelming majority of people born fit the label that they're given when they're born. There is a minority of population that it doesn't fit. So it is useful to label them, but it's also useful for people to understand that they may not agree with that, and when they're old enough to decide, they should be able to change whatever.
You're talking about you're talking about people that are just probably not, well, at least of age, I guess, to really make those kind of determinations.
Well, I mean,
I don't know.
I don't have.
I'm gonna give a little pushback on that. I think honestly, probably most people generally know what they identify with at a very, very young age. I never questioned myself that I ever thought I was female.
Yeah,
No.
no, I'm not talking about the age issue. I'm just saying that from a medical perspective, labeling them as either male or female, in the majority of cases, is useful. And if they get to a point that they decide,
I see what you're saying. Yeah, okay. When they're born, of course, yes. It's definitely
when you're born.
Yeah, it's definitely because we're talking about a small percentage of the population, and so I think there is a utility argument to be had that yes, we should automatically kind of say, look, we're gonna say this person's male or female up to a point where they can make the determination that they're not. Is that what you're arguing?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, what are we gonna do? Treat people like they have no gender until they're like capable of making that decision? I don't think that works too well. I think that'd be very hard on somebody's psychologically speaking. Goddess Scummer says, I've heard a rumor that you like pineapple on pizza, which is extreme position. Jeff, I love you, but I'm gonna have to block you now and never talk to you again. That is heresy. And by the way, it's not pizza with pineapple. It's just flatbread that tastes good. I will eat pineapple on pizza. That's not my preference. It has to be really good and has to have ham and it has to be a little bit burnt and yeah, probably either extra crispy thin crust or a mozzarella stuffed crust, but it's not my favorite. So, yeah.
Okay, Verillion did respond that the problem is when medical intervention has to be used before they get that choice. Example: removal of opposite organs. I'm not a fan of modifying babies.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so funny.
I'm really not.
I've changed my position a little bit on that. Let me get this out there because I was pretty when it comes to circumcision, right? We had a discussion on circumcision ages ago, and my position was basically it's up to the parents, right? But I always said I could be kind of swayed with decent argumentation. Now, I had some shitty argumentation. I actually had people that basically trolled me after that, right? And those are not people that are going to convince me otherwise, and those people are not going to be welcome in my live chats. But through actual reasoned argumentation, I've had to reevaluate that a little bit. I have revisited that position a little bit. I'm a lot more, at least, I don't know if I'm fully convinced, but I'm certainly a lot more leaning to the when it comes to circumcision. It may be medically unnecessary. I mean, it shouldn't be something that parents should be allowed to do merely because it conforms with their religious beliefs, because it is a form of body modification. Right?
It's mutilation.
It's a form of genital. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to parse it out differently. Sure, it is for all practical purposes a form of genital mutilation.
I think what he was getting at wasn't okay.
Let me just get my thoughts out there real quick. However, if there are medical necessities for it, if the doctors recommend for whatever reasons they think for a particular child, case by case, it is more beneficial. That's obviously up to the doctor, right? We give doctors the license to practice medicine because they've gone to school and educated themselves. So we, as a society, have given them the ability to make these kinds of decisions for us. That is how it works. Just like we've given the judges in court systems the ability to render judgment because that is what we've, as a society, allowed them to do because of their education and the demonstration that they're proficient in their particular fields. So, I'm not saying there's an absolutism where we shouldn't have circumcisions, but I am leaning now more maybe towards them being, medically unnecessary, and maybe there's a good argument that parents don't have some kind of right to do that because of religious expression. So I can change my position. And by the way, that is a huge change for me. When people say I don't change my positions, they're full of shit. With good argumentation, and by the way, one of the argumentations provided to me was the genital mutilation argument, right? So Nikki, I can change my mind on things, can't I?
Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing about it is that to me it's nothing more than genital mutilation. Like,
well, it's weird when a moil sucks the blood out too. I find that to be that's straight up just no. When a moil will actually like make the cut and then suck the blood.
Oh.
Yeah. So wrong on so many different reasons. No. No. Let me say it again for the people in the back. No. No, 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 no.
Mm,
But Sandy, you were trying
no.
to say something real quick. Sorry.
Oh no, the point isn't just in beautiful circumcision. There's in such cases as like minor hermaphrodism, where you have characteristics of both, and oftentimes the doctors will simply make the decision which way is easier for them to surgically fix, so that they're quote unquote normal. And unless there's a specific medical necessity, unless there's some medical necessity that requires them, like they're going to have serious medical issues if they don't do it. I'm not a fan of modifying children and letting them grow up with the bodies that they have and then deciding on their own, what they want to do about that.
Yeah, and that's a whole different topic we had too.
I'm also in favor of normalizing abnormality. Well, what would be called considered an abnormality. I hate that people think that you're abnormal just because you were born different.
I agree. Absolutely.
Everybody's born different. That's not a fault of yours.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree, though, the doctors should make the decisions, but again, maybe they don't need to even make a decision, right? Again, maybe they only need to do kind of any kind of surgical intervention when there's an actual health risk to be had, right? If there's an actual health risk, that's fine, but they're just doing it because they want some child to be what we consider to be social normative. Yeah, I don't think that's a good argument to have a surgery, right? Because I think that we should embrace differences, right? I don't think that having phenotypical differences should be. I mean, people should be like, hey, that's cool, it's different. In fact, and a lot of times, like for example, people have what's called when you have different color eyes. When you have what's that called?
Heterochromia.
Heterochromia. Yeah, heterochromia.
Yeah, heterochromia.
And so
heterochromia.
Yeah, heterochromia. And a lot of people find that beautiful, right? I think it's gorgeous, right?
I'm so jealous of heterochromats.
Oh yeah, it's and so are people even still like okay, I'm going to tell you, we all have our little, I don't know what the word, so we say kinks, like I don't know what, it's not even a kink. We all have our proclivities. No, we have our proclivities. I'll tell you one of my proclivities that I really find very attractive. Women with a streak of white, right? Which is a genetic thing, right? But just like dark hair, and then there's like one streak of white. I don't know what it is. I find that to be gorgeous for some reason. My Unfinished Journey says $5. All males have cervical vertebrae. Also, hiya, cider buddy. Yes, we have cervical vertebrae. Yes, this is true. Okay. Yeah, heterochromia. Yeah. By the way, do you guys know what I'm talking about? Like, just have that white streak. It's so attractive.
I think it's more common from trauma than it is from genetics. So
it can happen from trauma too. By the way, yeah, people, you can have white hair.
I've got a white streak.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
It's because I'm 43 and my hair's starting to turn gray, but there's one section that turns gray before everything else.
Actually, believe it or not, I don't think I've ever told anybody this. This right here on my patch of my goatee, been white since I was able to grow facial hair. Yeah, it's actually white right here, and so that is I assume is a genetic thing. But now that's all gray. It's all white. But yes, I was if you go back and look at all my photos, I've always had to dye my goatee.
When you looked all cranky and scary.
Yeah, I've always I have dark hair. That's all. I used to dye. I went gray really early. And in the Navy, I didn't have I had a mustache, but I didn't have a goatee in the Navy. So it wasn't until like I was in 1993 where I started growing this in. Then you can actually see the white here. But yeah. Let's see here.
All of biology disagrees with Willie Mays fan.
Oh yeah, and it's a shame. Well, all of science disagrees with Willie Mays fan because Will again thinks the Earth is 6,000 years old, right? So no offense to Willie. Again, he can have his opinions. He's the sounding board, the whiteboard right now to kind of bounce things off of. But he doesn't accept the fact the Earth is 6,000 is 4 billion years old. So no offense, Willie. His understanding of science is not the greatest, but he's a nice guy. I like Willie, and I'm glad he's back around. It's been a while. Maybe he might change, right? Well, I mean, like. Wayne Fillmore just posted, and again, I don't know how serious he is. He might just be going through some kind of emotional trauma of some kind. I've reached out to him, but I haven't heard from him yet. But Wayne Fillmore, I debated on the Mac Revolution, and about a month later, he left Young Earth Creationism because he realized it was right. And he's very staunch into science now. And he wrote for BioLogos. He's actually listed as an author with BioLogos, and he wrote a blog about our debate. And just recently on Facebook, 2 hours before I went live, he's like, I no longer believe in God, or I don't believe in God any longer. And he's going into some of the reasons, but maybe, there's a progressive thing. You start off a young earth creationist, you realize that's a lie. And then you realize there's some problems with the Bible. And then you realize there's contradictions. And then you realize there's just some nastiness out there. I can see a lot of people losing their faith progressively, And so, I don't know if that's where Wayne is at, but if anybody reaches out to him, please be kind to him. He's still, he's still one of my dearest friends, even though I don't talk to him that much, but I have the utmost respect for him. But I'd throw that out there. Willie, do you want to come in? Does anybody else want to join us? Because, I'm trying to get a random sample size here. I don't just want yes men. Yeah, we kind of figured what Wayne would, even if he hasn't like completely gone, to the place where he no longer believes God exists, not necessarily, full atheist, but agnostic. We saw some chinks in his beliefs over a period of time, right? I've known him for a very long time, and every time, he would have to try to defend something and go, wait a minute here. How can I defend this? And I think something happened, and it's happening probably related to the problem of evil. That why is there shitty things? Why does God have a world where there's so many bad things? And why if God, let's say there's a soul building exercise. I think it was, what's his name, Wick, if I'm not mistaken, Hicks, John. I think it was John Hicks, who had the argument that for theodicy, that we were here to have a soul building exercise, right? So we can learn the difference between good and bad and all that. And the argument would be, well, what is it that I have to learn if I have one less gratuitous evil in the world? If I stub my toe, which is considered to be a gratuitous or natural evil, that's just the terminology. Don't read too much into it. But if God has actualized this particular possible world of all possible worlds and said, I want Steve to stub his toe exactly 63 times in his life. Why? What is there more to be learned over 62 times, right? Why is there gratuitous evil out there? And the same thing, you just amplify that. Why is there so many tornadoes? Why is there so many hurricanes? Why is there so many, pain, much pain out there? What is it that requires so much horrific things that we have to learn from that, right? You guys see my point on that?
Yes, I've always been a fan of the argument of evil, or the problem with evil.
Yeah, the evidential problem of evil is one of my favorite arguments, because it's hard to just kind of get by. I've read Plantinga's Theodicy, but I think he goes off the rail. I think he makes a good argument against the logical problem of evil. I don't really have a problem with his theodicy there. But the logical problem of evil is very specific, right? And sure, yeah, it is an inconsistent logical system. You can't get around that. It's logic. But it doesn't really get you much anywhere. But the evidential is a lot more difficult. And I think, if I remember correctly, Plantinga actually starts invoking Adam and Eve in his Theodicy against the evidential problem of evil. And I'm like, no.
Yeah. Probably the first of the unbelievable stories in the Bible. Followed closely by Noah's Ark.
I believe Adam and Eve is BS. I'm agnostic, but it's just not biologically possible. There might have been some reasoning by what the story came from, but there was no first human. Period. It's just completely impossible. That's not how species work, right? Now, the way the RTB they do it, they believe that the first man or something that had the ensoulment, right? So he was just like a brute animal before, but then all of a sudden Adam would be the first man through Homo hypogenesis and Homo erectus and Homo florensis and Desovians and all these different species. All of a sudden we now have this one branch that are Homo sapiens, and then all of a sudden God said, you get a soul.
You specifically.
Yeah.
Only you.
Yeah. I don't want to put words in the RTB model, but that seems to be the case.
Yeah, well, I had a random discussion where I was looking up what are those stupid organelles in cells that...
mitochondria?
Yes, mitochondrial, yes. Yeah. Mitochondrial, and looking at mitochondrial DNA and how it's passed down to... In the overwhelming majority of cases is passed down matriarchally. You get your mitochondria from your mother.
Yes.
There are instances where you can inherit your father's mitochondrial DNA. That is incredibly rare, and it's very specific circumstances in which that happens. So they find it useful to backtrack and find what they call the mitochondrial Eve, and that's just the simple, the farthest back we can go of surviving strains of mitochondrial DNA, because somebody tried to make the somebody was trying to make the argument that there were 6 specific mitochondrial DNA strains that they traced back, and that was supposed to coincide with Noah's Ark and the 6 people that were able. And so I actually had to go and research mitochondrial DNA, things I do for weird fun, I guess. It sounded interesting, so I went and learned all about mitochondrial DNA.
Yeah, no, that's true, and that goes back, a couple 100,000 years, so it's way beyond the 6,000-7,000 years of the younger creationists put out there. But the thing with the mitochondrial, the factor that because that was an endosymbiosis event, that was something where you had an organism that was engulfed by some other organism, some kind of eukaryote. That really changed how animals, continued, because before they weren't animals, but we only produce a certain amount of ATP, right? Because of the citric acid cycle, or also known as the Krebs cycle. There's a little bit of ATP production there, but ATP is the powerhouse molecule, right? And once we got a mitochondrial DNA organelle in our cells, man, it was exponential how much more ATP production we could have. That led to more complex organisms, right? So that event where you had an organism engulf another one, and through endosymbiosis had the ability to produce quantifiably more ATP.
It's one of those. Yeah. It's one of those events in biological evolution that drastically changed the game.
We would never been able to have this much complexity if it wasn't for that. Now, there are other forms of endosymbiosis. The plant cells have had it as well. There's a form of that, I think it was chloroblast, if I'm not mistaken. But and it's probably inevitable, too. I mean, the things about biology I find interesting is that if life occurs on another planet, it would have to occur very similarly under very similar conditions. Let's say the conditions are exactly the same as the Earth. They're going to be the same chemical reactions. They're going to say the same chemical processes, the same chemical laws. DNA, RNA, single strand, all these things are going to have the same capabilities, right? They have to obey the same laws of they have to obey the same laws of physics, right? And even the first sodium ion type pump, rather be ATP works on a protein pump, but ion gradient. But even before that, there's some very ATP called FPATases and other types of systems where you actually can see there's rotation in the system because of ion transport. And so I think that's the right word, ion transport. But it's based on sodium, and I think later on was it potassium? If I'm not mistaken. It's been a while. But you can see the progression. You can see that more complexity came because we had the more ability to have ATP, which stores information. Because once those bonds are broken in ATP to form ADP, you release energy, right? So we can tap into this resource of stored energy as a form of adenosine triphosphate. So, anyways, we did get into some topic there.
Yeah, if we're to find other life in the galaxy, it's very likely that it will closely resemble life on Earth.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, different specific kinds of species may look quite a bit different, but the fundamental building blocks, all of the same processes, same characteristics, having eyes, having wings, having hair, having feathers, those kinds of things, are all going to be relatively similar to that on Earth. And it makes sense because, all of the building blocks of life are, 5 of the 6 most common elements in the universe.
Yep. By the way, I just want to note that Sweet Heathen is sexually harassing my entire live chat right now.
Having her organism engulfed.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh my God.
So if you're not a willing participant, if you haven't given sweet consent, please let her know now.
Once it takes off for good. There's no stopping that train.
She's trying to get your attention. She's not here for me. Don't kid yourself. I love Sweet.
How did we end up in biology?
Oh, because that's what I do on this channel. We just we derail all the time.
Because
it's planned.
Because I made some comment about mitochondrial DNA because somebody made a comment about Adam and Eve, and
Do you remember the debate I had on that? I debated true empiricism on because he was adamant that ATP synthase is analogous to turbine, and of course I took turbine theory in the military, right? I worked on turbines. I had to study steam theory and thermodynamics, and I also had biology in college. I learned about ATP synthase, and so I was like, wait a minute, these are not the same. One converts by steam. You have a certain amount of enthalpy on steam that causes extraction of that energy, and it converts it from thermal source into a rotational energy, right? Actually, a kinetic energy. It's kinetic energy to rotational energy, right? Because you have these blades, right? You have what's called pressure velocity compounding, and you have these Curtis stages. And basically, as steam goes through these nozzles, they increase the kinetic energy. The potential energy goes down, and it hits the blade and imparts energy to it. That's how a turbine works. And I go, that has nothing to do with how ATP synthase works. ATP synthase works in the fact you have a differential in how many proteins you have on one side of the membrane as opposed to the other, right? There's an ion gradient to be had there. And then you have an ion channel on the top part of it was the F1 part of the ATP synthase. But anyways, we did go down a rabbit hole. Let's get back on track real quick. So again, I don't want to go too long on this.
Verillion joined us.
Verillion joined us in the live chat or in the call?
In the call here.
Oh, I don't see.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh. Hey, what you got for us?
Hey.
I'm sorry, you're cut off here on my screen. Here is my doing. I didn't. Okay. All right. So welcome.
You come to yell at me.
Verillion.
Thank you. I don't have much to discuss really. I think we've all hashed out the problems with certain things, but going back to the circumcision, though, I believe it should be medical only. There are parts, unless the medical development has overcome this, there are parts where hairless skin needs to be used for other parts of the body. That's the only reason why.
Can you run that back? So only parts what?
Where hairless skin can be used.
Oh, okay. But okay, so when you can use skin to
Like a suture,
like a suture, okay.
Or around, say, a urethra passage or something like that, where you can't have hair growing. Otherwise, it causes more problems.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, it should always be because of medical considerations, right? Medical considerations are always going to trump anything else, right? Medical considerations really shouldn't have any kind of politicization to it, right? We should avoid politicizing things that are medical necessary. But again, we might have that discussion another time. Might be another controversy. I don't think I'm going to do it next week, but maybe because I try to go for controversy of the week. I want to go with, when I do these controversies, they're basically what has been gone on in the week that has been controversial. Now, if circumcision comes up as a controversy, then maybe I'll do one on a Friday. But I'm trying to do things that are just, hey, look, people are talking about this. Let's weigh in on it. And especially if there's no right or wrong answer. Now that might change. I might have a controversy where I'm like really putting forth a particular position, saying, look, this is what I believe, or even there's no controversy to be had. Like for example, with younger creationism, that's not a controversy, right? That's just them wrong, right? There's no controversy there. Flat Earth, there's no controversy there, right? They're just wrong. But I just want to see if we can at least try to find concepts and ideas and have dialogues where people are discussing things that are just current about what people are finding controversial, right? So let's kind of wrap this up. Sandrine, what do you got for us?
I think that the controversy was utterly ridiculous, especially considering CNN was trying to avoid controversy. Clearly, they were trying to avoid controversy.
Yeah, that was my point. I think it was, in a way, it was kind of admirable that they were trying to avoid controversy, and yet people made it controversial. At first, even I was a little bit like, hey, CNN, you just seem to be like, virtue signaling a little bit. Maybe you're just placating or something. But then I actually thought about it, right? I mean, I took a pause and I said, wait a minute here. If I worked for CNN and I didn't want to be controversial, I didn't want there to be a problem, how can we word this in a way where it doesn't, detract or distract from the what we're trying to put out, right? The information we're trying to put out. So, yeah, I probably would have done the same thing, don't you? Think you would have maybe changed it something if they were like, hey, look, we want to make this as least controversial as possible, knowing full well people will find controversy, but they did.
Yeah, it's like the least controversial way of putting it. Like I said, just from a grammatical or literature perspective, I didn't like that they used individuals. It could have been worded better, more elegantly, but no, they were specifically going for non-controversy. It's like, look, we're not going to go through and try and label all of the potential people who may have a cervix, because then one will forget something, or somebody will find something to find fault with it, and we're just going to say, hey, anybody with the cervix should probably start getting it checked at 25. There's not really much need to get it checked at 21. It's a new medical thing. Let's talk about the medical procedure. What's medically relevant
that's
here.
what they were trying to push, was the medical aspect of it. And so, yeah, it's a shame that it got denigrated into something else.
Like I said, first world problems. My God.
Right. Yeah, it's a shame.
To be outraged over the usage, and it's a ridiculous argument to say that they're going to confuse people on biology, because they're not even bringing biology into it at all. They're not. Yeah, there's nothing to conflate there. They're just saying. Yeah, no, I
agree with you. I pointed it out that was people arguing that, and I evaluated them. Like, look, if it's CNN, right? I mean, if this was like a textbook, then I might have some problems with it, right? But even then, it'd be minuscule. But I mean, nobody who listens to CNN is going to be that confused about some kind of biological functions and different organs of what for biology. But anyways, Willie Mayfan wanted to drop in before we left, though he's got some feedback.
Hey, Steve, how are you?
Hey, it's been a while, dude. People may not even remember who you are, but see, I know a lot of people, man. I go way back.
I was first on when you wanted me to debate was it Jim? Who's the atheist? Jim
Majors?
Gosh,
Majors?
Jim Majors, thank you.
Yeah.
About whether he was a Christian or not. And then a few moments later, Cy jumped in and kind of took over the wheel from there.
You watched my conversation with Cy the other night.
Of course I did. Of course, I love your content. So let me just make a quick disclaimer. I by no means am a biblical scholar, nor do I hold a PhD in any form of science. Most of you are probably a heck of a lot smarter than I am. However, I do have my views. I do have my opinions that presuppose God. So obviously, I do have an opinion on all this.
Mm-hmm.
So
I do have a quick question. I do have a quick question about that.
Go ahead.
Even if you presuppose God,
Mm-hmm.
why can't you accept evolution?
Because that's not what the Bible says. That's not what God's word says. He didn't create evolution. He created man and woman.
He had to have created evolution, though, because even if you were to buy all of the Bible's stories as literal accounts of history to be true and accurate, he had to have, because it states how many animals were on the ark, and we can clearly see today that there are more than that available. He just says to collect the kinds of animals, so those kinds have clearly divided out into more versions of the same, like the cat kind.
Let me put it to him this way, Sandring. Willie, real quick, and again, this is way more tangent than we're going to get into tonight, but just to kind of put it this way, the only way we can actually have biodiversification, the only way we can actually explain new species is through evolution. We see it happen daily. Evolution occurs. There's no other possible. We literally see it happen. In real time. We've seen macroevolution happen in real time. Various types of wheatgrass and polyploidy and whole genome duplication. We know that it exists. Speciation occurs. That's evolution. I hate to use the word by definition, but that literally is a prescriptive definition, or at least a useful definition that you use in biology, is a change of allelic frequency or heritable traits from one generation to the next generation over time. Yes, we see that, right?
Well, of course, I believe in micro.
No, macro. We see macro, dude. There's evidence of macro.
No, I would have to respectfully and lovingly disagree.
You can, but here's the thing: your disagreement doesn't change ontological facts, right? I mean, you can go read papers and you can see it happen in real time. They've literally seen it, macroevolution in starfish, date palms. I've read papers on sea anemones. I've read it on, like I said, wheat germ especially. They can actually undergo speciation in a single generation. Right? In one generation, due to polyploidy and whole genome duplication, you can have a macroevolutionary event. It doesn't take a lot of time. It doesn't take small micro events. This is a misconception that I think that probably creationists has put out. But macroevolution is not really relevant to time. It's relevant is when you have a biological reproductive isolation between the daughter products and the parent, right? So if you have, for example, what's called sympatric speciation, you can have an organism that has, this is usually bacteria or some kind of something, but you have an organism that has like diploid 2n4 or something, right? Or 2n2 or 2n3. But the offsprings have a multiplication of that. They have a doubling of the chromosomes. They have a whole genome duplication event. Let's say that you start off and you have a replication event of a 2n3 and a 2n5. They produce something like a 2n10 or something. Those offspring can never mate with the progenitors. That is macroevolution.
Yeah. You're starting to get a little specific into details that a lot of people may not understand.
Well, at least it's out there, but yeah, that'd be true. But again, I want Willie to know that look, we're not just pulling the stuff out of our yin yang. We are kind of at least a little bit familiar with these concepts. So when you say that
that was my point. Was we observe these things happening. Yeah. We observe speciation events. We observe.
He can go read these things, right? He
micro.
Can see. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying that we observe these things. So unless the entire human race is delusional or being deluded, then we see these things. We observe these things. So we know that they had to have happened. And if you presuppose God, then God must have allowed for both forms of evolution.
Yeah,
even though I don't like using micro and macro evolution. I realize it's kind of it's functionally useful, but
yeah.
I mean it's just simply evolution. At some point, evolution progresses to the point that you have a speciation event. But
it's just a helpful convention distinction. But see, I think Willie would probably argue that either we've been lied to by 99% of all the world's scientists, or we would argue that he's been lied to a very small percentage of young Earth creationists that are just absolutely dishonest. So.
Well, this is a conversation. It's a totally different conversation than what the topic is.
Yes, it is. Yes.
So,
I'm sorry. I was just curious.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. I mean, I'll say this, and let's stick to topic.
Go for it.
I do believe in a young Earth creation. I believe that God created man and woman. But as far as the topic goes, can men have cervixes? No, of course not.
What about transgender? From men to female to men. Well, actually, it'd be men to women. I'm sorry. Women to men, they would still have cervix, right? Would you? So if the word men referred to a transgender female to male, in that case, that man would have a cervix in that case, would they not?
As a secular answer or question, yes.
I don't know what secularism has anything to do with that. There's no even religious connotations to that.
A woman cannot be a man, and a man cannot be a woman.
But these are words. They don't have any intrinsic meaning to them, right? They're usages.
Let's stick with the sex versus gender topic, okay?
Nikki, you can dive into this one. This is all yours if you want. Yeah, go nuts.
I'm pouncing.
Let her pounce. I'm gonna mute. We all gonna shut up right now.
So I can't see the live chat, so I don't know how much hate is coming at me, but I just want to make it clear that I love you all.
No, look, I have dude. You're a friend. You don't have to have the same positions. You make a good sounding board. But it's great actually because you are giving the archetypal arguments that a lot of us will hear on Twitter, and so why ignore those things? Because then you're not addressing the arguments and you're just pretending that they don't exist, right? So I would never want to silence your voice on that. So go ahead.
Yeah. So as far as I'm concerned, gender and sex are the same. Now, this is more of a recent kind of discussion and topic over the last, pick a year, 10, 20, 50 years, whatever you might say. But until...
Transgender people have existed since the beginning of time. Especially I mean, especially if you look at Native Americans, the only idea that gender and sex are so rigid comes from this, what's the word? Just the Christianity, like Roman Catholic Christianity. Native Americans
very
had
Anglo-Saxon.
transgender people.
Yeah, it's a very
Yes.
yeah, very
Yes,
Anglo-Saxon
that.
opinion.
I mean, Native Americans more than one, and in Africa too, had words for transgendered people.
And Indian,
And
as in India. As
More specifically, there's a tribe in Native that are Native American, and there are people with a specific gender that they were born that they're not. There's people with they're called three spirits, and that is technically non-binary, and etc. Like,
I'm not disagreeing, nor am I denying that there have been people that have been transgendered over the years at all. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is gender and sex are the same thing. And
I would say, go ahead, finish.
Earlier in the chat, we had a slight conversation in reference to gender and sex, and it was more of a gender assignment or a gender role. But just because a man feels like he's a woman and makes a transition doesn't make him or her. However, as I said in the chat, I have no problem at all if someone is transgendered, man, woman, woman, man, of calling them Nikki or Sarah or Julie or Mike. You know, I don't have an issue with that. We're all created in the image of God. Everyone has value. Everyone is worthy of respect and dignity. So as far as that goes, for me, gender and sex are the same thing. Now we also had a conversation about is gender by convention, and I want to say a couple people said that it was. So I posed the question: okay, if gender is by convention, then what about 100, 200, 500 years ago? That was not the issue. Gender, I don't know if the word gender was around 500 years ago. I'm not a historian in that, but if you were a man, you were a man. If you were a woman, you were a woman.
only in Anglo-Saxon.
Now let me
in one small faction of the world, though.
Let me pose this. It's a question rather than a comment. If gender is merely by convention, is it not fair to say logically, say 50 years, pick a number, it doesn't matter, sometime in the future, a larger culture comes in and says gender is sex, sex is gender. By default, would you not have to agree with that because it's by convention?
But
of course you don't have to agree. You're not agreeing.
Yeah.
That's the whole point that I said, that it's incredibly useful to separate sex and gender and use and have those usages be different. That it makes it very interesting or very useful.
But my question is I'm sorry.
And I don't buy that gender is by convention alone, because there are.
That's what I wanted to ask.
Right. There are also biological factors involved in it as well. Less so today than there used to be.
So explain it to me like I'm a 10-year-old. Sex is sex. You're a man. And a man
sex is based in biology and is determined by your gamete production. Sex is binary in all mammals, including human beings. When you're talking about gender encompasses a lot more than just biology, because now you're dealing with human minds and human identity. And so that becomes a lot more amorphous than a biological definition. So you You have things like your gender identity. You have things like gender roles, traditional and gender roles of tomorrow. There's a lot of things incorporated in that, and gender is far more fluid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
or no gender roles at all.
Let me read this real quick. And by the way, I like listening. Like I said, you guys may notice I'm not wearing headphones tonight. I've got a little earpiece in. And I'm telling you, this is reminding me of the days where I just used to listen to the radio in the middle of the night. And I used to listen to these people, have discussions back and forth, just of these very natures. This is nostalgic for me. I like this. I know why my audience listens to a lot of this stuff, because I listen for the same reason. I'm actually just love doing this. But Atheist Linguist says, I can't help but think that a lot of conservative railing against transgenderism is at its core a refusal to accept that people don't fit into convenient little boxes. And in some degrees, yes. I think the religious right has definitely, made it very difficult. But I think the problem with Willie is having is that he's so entrenched in this ideology that there's male or female. But again, when we're talking about genders, that is a bimodal, at least it's typically understood as a bimodal distribution, right? Some people are more feminine than others. Some people identify more as female than others, right?
According to whose worldview?
According to bimodal distribution. This is mathematics. I mean,
according to the people you actually talk to.
Yeah, sociologists, right? People experts in their fields, right? Now, again, you don't have to accept that paradigm, but that's the most common. And so you exist between some state of bimodal, where you have one mode here, which would be female, one mode here, male, and then between them, you're kind of this way, that way. I'm over here. Like, I identify with male. I'm a cisgender male, so I'm on one mode. Nikki would be more probably between middle to female, right? And then somebody who's non-binary in the middle. Where do you put yourself?
Yeah, I'm fully cis female. I
fully
don't
cis female. Okay,
yeah.
so you don't consider yourself non-binary at all.
Yeah, I just have a different sex. I'm pansexual.
Yeah,
so.
but that's different, right? Your sexual interest, right? You could be fully female. This is how you feel, right? This is how you manifest it, right? But you can love women, you can love men, you can love both. So yeah, like me, I'm cisgender because I'm comfortable as a male with my phenotype and genotype. I have no problem with that, but I'm attracted to females, right? And by the way, contrary to popular belief, very rarely am I actually really attracted to somebody. So I mean, I'm a sapio, and so to me, it's very rare. But people know who I have one person who I'm attracted to, and it's been that way for a year and a half now. I don't know why people think that I'm hitting on people when it never happens.
Isn't there something called body dysmorphia? Am I saying
but that's
right?
that's a shape, right? Body dysmorphia is also when you have what is it? Mesotype, endotype, and what's the other one? This is your actual body shape, right? When you feel like your body image is different than what it physically is, right? You can be a mesomorph but feel like an endomorph.
Of which gender dysphoria is a subcategory of body dysmorphia.
Yeah, it's there a lot of times within transgendered people, they're not all the time, because of course there's exceptions.
Ectomorph, that's what I was thinking of. Ectomorph. Sorry.
They're together, but for example, I have body dysmorphia, and when I look in the mirror, when I see me, I'm disgusted, and I hate what I see in the mirror, and that actually ties into some of the mental illness issues that some trans people go through, unfortunately. And it is actually why so the LGBTQ community are one of the higher suicide rates, and then within the LGBT community there is also transgendered people who are even higher than LGBT as a whole. So
and this is a real issue with you. This is something you deal with, legit deal with, right?
Yeah, it ties into my suicidal ideation a little bit, but I wasn't a lot of times it's not something that you're just born with. Mine was probably caused by trauma, growing up and stuff. So of course that's not related to trans people at all, but it is something that I do share with them within my body dysphoria.
So body dysmorphia is that not?
I was gonna.
Dysphoria. Yeah, it's dysphoria.
It's
sorry.
one or
Like I
the
said,
other.
I
I
didn't
never
know
get it right either. It's fine.
Well,
like I have
there's-
it. And I always
Well, yeah, there's
forget,
different types
so.
of dysphoria, right? I mean, you have obviously a gender dysphoria. That's you're supposedly they assign you a gender at birth. Again, I find that odd, right? But let's say you go with that. So you're assigned a gender at birth, and you feel like you're not the assigned gender, right? So you're not comfortable in your own body. But there's also body dysphoria, where it's more of your shape of your body, right? The form of your body. You see yourself differently than somebody else would. Like you can say, look, I think I'm skinny. I'm like, well, actually, you look normal. Or I think I'm overweight. And I'm like, no, you're basically a mesomorph. You're
It's
and it's also
just
social
very
dysphoria as well,
slightly-
right? How people perceive
It's kind
you.
of slightly different from what I've heard from people. It's very slightly different. It's more like they look into the mirror and their brain does not recognize the person that's in the mirror because they don't have the specific
Their
body.
physical appearance doesn't match their internal mental appearance.
But what about this?
Yeah, that's a little bit.
What about this?
Just kind of slight variation.
What about a social dysphoria? Like I think I look fairly male, right? But I got long hair. But let's say I look exactly like a woman, right? But I'm a man. I just have long hair, but I've got facial features that you think would be effeminate or something like that. And then so people treat me as a female, right? And again, this happens in society. We whether we like it or not, women and men do get a little different treatment in society. But let's say that people are always calling me she, or people assume ask me like weird questions like I don't know, are you in menopause or something? It's like whatever. That'd be a social dysphoria because I'd be like, wait a minute, I'm being perceived differently than what I actually think that I am. That would be odd,
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Let me ask everyone a question. Based on you, on your definition of body dysmorphia, did I say it right?
Yeah.
Body dysmorphia. That starts in the mind, clearly. Is that not logic? Is that not to say that that's what someone who is transgendered, the basis of why they're transgendered?
It depends. Some people think that dysphoria is a requirement for trans. It's called, I think they were called true scum. Some people don't, and that's been a hot issue in the trans community. Do you have to have dysphoria in order to be trans? Right.
Well, doesn't it logically follow to say that yes, it would?
Not necessarily so. I mean, I've had people. Again, I've talked to people that argue either way. Right. I think it's really up to the person. If they feel like they're not, they're trans, but they don't suffer from dysphoria. Okay. I can't access their minds, right? That is epistemically, off limits to me, right? They can only give their own subjective
what about,
evaluations.
What
right?
about
Who am I to
somebody,
say that they're not experiencing what they're experiencing, right?
Yeah, because you can have somebody who doesn't dislike their body as far as they don't look at it and think it's disgusting. They think they can look at it and say, hey, that's a really great, masculine body. And mentally, they're like, I just really, 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 really wish that it was a female body instead.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They don't necessarily hate their body. They just don't. They would have preferred to have some other, have a different gender.
Yeah. And again, there's not dysphoria generally, if I'm not mistaken, is like one of those things that in order to have dysphoria, it has to cause some kind of actual influence in your life, right? It has to have some kind of problem in your life. Most things when it comes to again, I'm throwing this out there. It may not be right, but generally speaking, for things to be considered to be detrimental, right? Something to be considered to be diagnostically evaluatable, it has to have an influence in your life in some ways, right? To be a problem when it comes to these psychological things. In many cases, maybe not necessarily this one, but if somebody doesn't have that dysphoria where it's not an influence in their life, they're not being bothered by it, they have no, whatever. Again, I don't have any influence on them one way or another of whether they consider themselves trans or not. That's completely up to them. I don't think you have to have dysphoria for it. But you know what the funny is, from what I recall, the people that say that you have to have dysphoria are in the trans community, right? They are like, no, we're excluding you. We're saying that you're not one of us because you don't have true dysphoria. And I'm like, wait a minute here, aren't you doing exactly what TERFs are doing to you? If that's the case, am I missing something there?
Okay, so Steve, let me ask this question then, and it's open to anybody to answer. If a man feels like a woman, that's what they feel, right? I mean, that's fair for me to say.
Yeah, it's more than just that, though. I mean, it's your whole being. It's not just a feeling. It's like, look, I can feel happy, I can feel sad, but my essence, right, who I am as a person, is male.
Okay, So someone says, they're just say a man. It doesn't really matter. A man says, "I am a woman." They know it in their brain, or they think they know it. Let's just say they know it. And I'm a woman. Does that make that man a woman?
Yeah, because we're talking again about we're talking about gender expression, right?
Yeah, gender.
Yeah,
The
okay.
word gender. Okay. So if someone feels, go ahead.
Well, let me run it by this way. Maybe I can try to get. Okay, so you identify as a male, clearly, right?
Yes.
You're a big guy. I mean, you work out. You're in good shape. You have a male energy to you. Would you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you could probably kill us all with a finger. I get it, right? Okay, so let's say all of a sudden you woke up.
Steve, I'm armed.
Are you ripped, Sandring?
No, I'm armed.
Oh, you're armed.
No, I'm not ripped.
He's like, you know what? Your muscles, my 45. Let's see who wins.
Yeah.
He sounds like a nerd. He's probably not ripped.
So Willie Mayfair. Again, this is a hypothetical situation. Obviously hypothetical. But let's say you woke up tomorrow and you had Nicole's body, right? And by the way, she's got it going on. So let's say that you woke up and you were phenotypically female, right? Would you all of a sudden say that you're no longer a man? Is that how you view it? Because I wouldn't. If I was, know this is going to be clipped, but I was actually inside Nikki's body. I know somebody's going to take that out of context.
Oh boy! Oh boy!
Run with that one.
I consent. I consent.
You're going to make me blush. But I would not all of a sudden say that, look, I'm now a female. I'd be like, no, I'm still identifying as a male, right? I'm not going to identify as a female merely because my phenotype has changed. Oh, people are going to take that one and run with it. Yeah.
Legitimately trapped in the wrong body.
Right, that's exactly how I look at it, sure.
You see a different thing. Yeah.
So by your definition, if someone thinks they are something, they are something.
No, not necessarily. Look, I mean, again, you can't run this argument. Look, I think I'm a bat, therefore I'm a bat. We're not talking about changing your species. We're talking about gender expression, right?
Well, let's just stick with gender. I'm not talking about bats.
If somebody believes that they, if they believe that they have, the consciousness and the mindset female, yeah, that's female to me. I don't know what else to call it.
They're female, gendered in a male body.
Yeah. Or biologically male body.
This is where the distinction between saying sex and gender, I believe, becomes important, because if you want to say, if your question is, if a biological male decides or feels that they are, a female gender, does it make them biologically female? No, it doesn't. We can't change our biology. Yeah. But it certainly can change they can certainly change their gender identity and their gender presentation.
Yeah.
Okay, so by saying that, you want, when I say you, it's just general, not you specifically.
I'm taking it completely specifically.
Okay. So if someone thinks that they're another gender, and to me, again, sex and gender are the same. I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for that. But if someone thinks that they're another gender, does it follow that I need to say, yes, you are a woman? Or can I hold to my beliefs that a man is a man and a woman is a woman?
You're entirely free to your own opinions.
Yeah. I mean, you can believe that, but if you don't want to be an asshole, don't be an asshole. Because
does it make
you're like, oh, well, biologically, you're this, so you're this, and I'm not going to call you or identify you. That's just an asshole move. Like, you can disagree with someone, but I empathize to the point where I can understand exactly where they're coming from, and science stands behind the fact that trans people exist. All you got to do is just accept them for who they are and stop trying to, talk them out of it, because that's literally what kills people.
Yeah, the trans community doesn't have the right to force you to believe their ideology.
Yeah, that's a good point. We're going to kind of leave it at that. That's a good point that we can touch on real quick. Is that, look, these are real life issues that affect real life people, and that can cause harm, and people can be self-harming. We've seen it happen in our community, so we have to approach it in a very kind of a caring and compassionate ways to have these discussions. Yeah. But I think that when you start having these types of black and white type positions, right? This weird,
Yeah.
well, only male and female, blah blah blah. It doesn't really do anybody any good because you're affecting people that are telling you, right? No, this is not how we think. Stop telling us how we think. And when you're making it worse for them, and even when they get to the point where they suffer from depression or God forbid they feel suicidal or something like that, you're exacerbating that. And I'm sorry, but I can't imagine a God that thinks that's good. I can't imagine a God going, you know what? Yeah, go ahead and preach the word that this and this and this. But you know what? If somebody who is actually suffering, you make it worse for them, that's not a bad thing. I just can't imagine a God like that,
Steve, may I end on one thing?
Yes, absolutely.
Because I know you want to wrap it up.
Yes.
If someone wants to be called Nikki, okay, or Steve or whatever, and they're a man and they want to be a woman or they think they are a woman or they are a woman, whatever, however you want to say it, I don't have any issue with calling them what they want me to call them. It doesn't make me feel any different towards them in any way that I would look at anyone else. If a man comes in and is dressed like a woman and he says, "My name is Sarah," I'm gonna say, "Hi, Sarah. Nice to meet you." I don't have any issue.
I get it. You're not going to go to where you'd be a dick to them. I get that.
Absolutely not. That is not the Christian way. I love everyone. Regardless.
So let me ask. If there's people out there, people in the trans community. I mean, would you look at somebody like Willie Mays and go, look, yeah, he's a transphobe, but would you do the same courtesy to him and say, look, yeah, he might be saying some transphobic things, but I'm not going to make him into an enemy. There's no reason. He might change his position one of these days, right? Because I notice a lot of things with the more radical people in the communities. It's like you're either with us or against us. Where there's no nuance. It's like I'm going to treat everybody the same. You disagree with us, you're automatically wrong. There are people that well, no longer in my community, but there's people out there that like you can't even have a discussion with us because you're just wrong if you disagree with anything we say. No, it doesn't work that way. So maybe we can have a little bit of media in the minds. Look, I know Willie Mays is a nice guy. He actually believes what he believes. And I don't think that we should be labeling people negative things if they're really giving us their honest positions, right? I think those are the ones we want to talk to. So, what do you think? What do you guys think about Willie? I mean, by the way, there's really been nobody shitting on you, dude. So,
Really?
Yeah, really. Yeah. I mean, I haven't read everything.
Nice of them.
But, I mean, I'd rather have something like you that, yes, you take a position that I don't agree with, obviously, but you know what? There's room for discourse there. I mean, you're willing to listen and you're willing to present your views and you're not condemning them. You're not basically saying, look, we should shit on somebody because they're different than us. I'm saying maybe we shouldn't shit on people that have differing opinions. Just talk to them instead, right? Because it's no good to alienate them, right? Why would you want anybody to treat Willie as a bad person when he's not? He just maybe has bad beliefs. But that's what we're here for, to talk about beliefs, right? And see if they're good or bad, right? Or
sorry, I had to laugh at that.
Well,
that's cool.
We'll get to the root of
what
why
do you think, Nikki? What do you think of Willie?
I mean, there's definitely cause for discussion there.
Oh well, okay.
I mean,
Okay. Sure.
I'd like talking to people like this. I mean, even when I was a conservative right Christian, I still listened to people when they spoke.
God, those would have been interesting days. Do you have videos of those?
No.
Oh damn.
For what it's worth, Nikki, I love you. I don't have any disdain or any type of negative feeling towards you. You're a human being created in the image of God, so nothing's going to change in that matter. I mean, you may have your own feelings towards me, but that's not going to change the way I love you.
Yeah, well, no, that's the thing, though. Is like, it's not intrinsically bad that you disagree. I mean, as long as there's a civil discussion that can take place, I will never hold any form of opinion against somebody unless it's like, oh, well, you're a different color than me, so you're not human. That's where you draw the line. Basically.
No, I don't disagree.
You say that another person is less valid of a person because of specific things about them.
Right. I don't agree with your lifestyle, but that has nothing to do with the way I feel about you personally.
Yeah. I'm sorry. So, really quick, I'm a cis woman, so I identify as a woman. I'm not trans. Are you talking about like me being pansexual, or? Because we can get into that.
No, just
it's a whole different ballgame. Sorry, I meant to mute when I was talking.
I asked earlier because I honestly don't know. Were you
Yeah.
born a woman or were you born a man?
Yeah, I'm cis. I am a cis female. So
She was born.
I was born female, and I am a female.
Okay. And I understand.
She could biologically reproduce and somehow magically put something that big through something that big, which I will to this day never understand. But
I know that's.
I don't. Again, God going, hey, this is a good idea. Let's make an orifice like this. Go like this.
I've had my ex-wife had 3 kids. I've seen my boys.
Yeah, I would have probably, if God would have like had a sit-down meeting with people and conferred with people, I probably would have talked him out of that particular approach to reproduction. But whatever, who am I, right? But
well, I mean, humans, it's even harder for us to reproduce because like the heads are so big. Like,
well, that's actually a fact. That's actually a fact because
hey, look, at least a vagina is a fleshy part, so it can stretch. It's the damn hip bones that really suck.
They don't come back.
Oh God! Yeah.
But here's an interesting point of fact, and we'll leave it with this to wrap up on. Natural selection has actually happened because women that normally would have died in childbirth because the head is too big to pass through the birth canal, they have been medically, artificially having birth, and so those genes have been passed on that would normally have been died out. So now they are actually saying that. Who knows? Maybe in 10,000 years, the human race will no longer ever be able to give natural childbirth because of natural selection being artificially manipulated.
We have largely removed ourselves from the natural selection.
Yeah, exactly.
Pressures.
We have really modified what it means to be for natural selection.
I mean, we're not even in the food chain anymore.
Usually.
Well, I want to thank Nikki and is it a Sandring? Isandring and Steve, I want to thank you all very much for allowing me to come in and talk. I've really, really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you.
Really.
Yeah, that's what I like to hear. Well, I enjoyed it too. Again, I think we discussed it on a very intelligent level. I think we discussed it with tact. If anybody says otherwise, I'd like to know why. But if again, I'm not talking about the idiots. They're gonna find controversy in anything, right? They don't get addressed. But for the people that subscribe, the people that are members of the channel, the people that are Patreons, I want to make sure that I do these topics justice, especially when they are controversial like this. I really didn't think it was going to be a dumpster fire. It had the potential. Right? It had the potential to be a dumpster fire, of course. But I think that we all try to make sure that when we're talking about these types of topics, we do so in a very intelligent and respectful way, right? Do we agree?
Yeah. It's like when people call me transphobic. I have to laugh at them.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've got people. I have trans friends that they call transphobic. I got people that are gay they call homophobic. I mean, these are just terms they throw out as weapons. They're not meant to even describe anything for those people because they're just using it as some pejorative to try to make points because they don't want to. Well, actually, I'd say it's not that they don't want to. I think they have the inability to actually have these types of conversations. Golden Unicorn, $2, New Zealand. C-section cause evolution in human population. Yes, absolutely. That is very true. Yes. So we'll leave it on this. Atheist linguist, I have to be one of the most profound ironies of evolution, namely in it's produced a species capable of turning the tables on the whole system. Yeah, I mean, nature created us with the ability to understand and learn and change things, right? I mean, we're one of the only species that really has the ability to set a course for our own, quote, natural progression, right? I mean,
I hear people talk about the next step in human evolution, and they always think that it's going to be a step forward or a step better. And I'm like, okay, the evidence doesn't really support that because we've removed ourselves from a large number of natural selection pressures. So people with bad eyesight, for example, are becoming more prevalent in the world because we have glasses. And as horrible as this is about to sound, this is where everybody can start sending me the hate mail, the www.fuckoff.com. Things like genetically inherited childhood leukemia, for example. We're coming up with better ways of treating that. Well, if we're successful, that child can grow up and have families who then pass on that gene and we are spreading more genes for more childhood leukemia, genetically inherited.
Yeah.
So I don't see the evidence for the human beings taking a step forward in their evolution, but I certainly see the evidence that we're going to. Yeah, we're actually going to be stepping backwards. And how do you fix that? I mean, CRISPR hopefully shows some promise, but that's the only way we're going to fix the problem, because it's certainly unethical and inhumane to just say, well, we're going to stop treating childhood leukemia. We're going to stop doing C-sections. Yeah. We're going to stop issuing people glasses.
Yeah, and things. Here's the thing: the problem, the solutions we come to fix things have long-term consequences, right? And so, I think as a species, most all mammalian species have a life expectancy. They all have a shelf life. Sorry. Mammals have a shelf life. They go extinct. We're going to be no different. There'll be another species that either A, replaces us, dominates us, be Homo sapien something or other, right? They're still going to be Homo sapiens. They're still humans, right? Never any offspring from us, due to Meyer's law of monophyly, will stipulate they have to be humans. But they're going to be some other species of humans, right? That's either going to happen, or they're just going to be extinct, and just going to die out, right?
Humans let's be honest, we're probably going to wipe ourselves out.
Probably before then happens, or a natural event. But yeah, I mean, we have a shelf life.
Humans will never evolve because we're not evolved on scum.
Well, populations evolve. The population evolves every day. Every time there's a birth, there's a death, there's evolution. That's literally what it means. There's a change of allelic frequency.
I had to say it because I love you, Steve.
All right, all right, guys. I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to end the call here, and this kind of my last things, so I don't get too distracted, because I've never shut up. So I love you all. Nikki, thank you for joining us. Sandring, always a pleasure.
Can I just say one thing?
Yes.
So long, and thanks for all the fish.
Yes, I read that book. Yes, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
And unfortunately, dolphins aren't likely anytime soon to have a large leap forward in intelligence.
Let me ask for Raymond before he goes. What was the question? Everybody know what the question was? 42 was the answer, but what was the question? We'll see if anybody.
What is the meaning of life?
Nope, that wasn't the question. That wasn't the question to the supercomputer.
I'm so confused.
Just before the Earth blew up, the supercomputer Vorlons were about to give the answer to the question. The question that would explain everything. But the question was, what is 6 by 9? Go look it up. Bye.